Hashtag Doggy People with Phil Lassman.
Hello, it's me, and welcome to another edition of Hashtag Doggy People, the show about life, love, and dogs. Now, my guest this week is probably the UK's greatest authority on dog breeds. She's also one half of BBC's Barking Blondes, a radio show, and she's presenter of the very popular podcast, A Dog's Life. I'm delighted to welcome my very blonde, very lovely friend, Anna Webb.
Hey Phil, so good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you too. Do you know what, Anna? You'll remember this. Well, do you remember it was almost 3 years ago that we were actually talking about me doing this show, and I remember you distinctly saying to me, "Phil, don't do it. You'll make a complete hash of it. You're a joker." Well, guess what, Anna? You were absolutely right.
Hang on a minute, Phil. I don't remember saying anything of the kind. In fact, I said the opposite. And I think I said to you, you would be the next Jonathan Ross.
A lot of the guests I have on the show are friends of mine. Not all of them are, but this lady is an actual personal friend, so we can have a little bit of a banter. How have you coped with actually writing and producing not one, but two shows every single week? Because you've got your radio show and you've got your podcast.
It is like juggling like loads of plates here, to be honest. And I've found, the beginning of lockdown, yes, it was dire. The first 3 months, it's in the past. But, it's the podcast has been great discipline for me, to be honest. And it's been a fantastic way to reach out to people. So, you do it and it's kept me really busy. And that's been fantastic. And the radio show, gosh, that's been going now for, 11 and a half years.
Wow.
So kind of just part of my, I would like to say DNA, but that might sound a bit boastful. But it's just what happens every Thursday, which I love it so much. But I don't produce it, remember. I'm the co-host, really. I contribute every week. I suggest guests, but it is produced by a BBC full-time member of staff, whereas my podcast is not. It's all produced by myself, with help, of course, from Mike Hansen at Pod People UK.
Mike gave me a huge help to get this show started. Obviously, my whole thing is just to try and raise money for the charities that we're talking about. How many episodes of your podcast, A Dog's Life, have you recorded so far?
Okay, we are on episode 54. That airs.
Wow, 54!
54, I can't believe it either.
That's amazing.
I know, and I'm very proud of it.
To
be fair, the podcast really encapsulates the first 3 years of the radio show on Radio London. I know the guests I want to have. I know the angles we want to have. I know the objectives of the podcast I want to adhere to. And I'm feeling that I'm ticking those boxes at the moment.
Since you've been doing this, you've become a proper media star. And rumour has it that you've got a new range of products out called My Line? I have done my research,
This is so new, and it came about, to be honest with you, because I believe that a long line, a 5-meter long line for training your dog, because I do offer training and behaviour.
Yes, I know you train.
It's probably the most important product, all right, that you should invest in. Prudence's breeder gave me a very special long line for Christmas a few years ago that was orange, and it was made of this stuff called biothan rubber, which hadn't at that point, 2016, actually arrived in the UK. So people would say, where did you get this from? It's amazing for loads of reasons, which I won't bore everybody with. Lo and behold, I've kind of emulated that design inspired by Prudence, but made it even better with a super security clip, and it's robustly made in London.
I know that your father was an amazing lover of animals. He was very involved with animal welfare, and he was also involved with the RSPCA right back in the day. What influence did your dad have on you in terms of animal welfare?
Oh, yeah, no, Dad was a very strong personality. He was quite an old dad for someone to have. So he had me when he was 45. He'd fought in the Second World War and been very brave and got the Military Cross and sacrificed pretty much his hearing for that, and stuff in doing that. And he being born in 1920, grew up with animals, with dogs, and they were really, I think, part of life more in a very simple way back then. When I was very young, so aged about 8, Dad was retired from doing all that army thing, and he became secretary of the Shropshire branch of the RSPCA. So it was kind of around me, a lot of animal lovers, all my mum's friends, all my relatives, everyone had dogs. So dogs were around me all the time. We had dogs, rescue Springer Spaniels. Anyway, so the conversations would range from talking about this Afghan hound that I remember so clearly called Lucy, that was found in a shed, emaciated. Her chances of survival were, grim, but she did pull through and found a lovely home and so on. And that, these stories, she was covered in feces and just dire. And I would just think, how on earth, this hit me a lot. So when you're very young, that impacts, and when we go around to visit family and relatives and everything, I'd never like to hang around with the people. I'd just go in their garden, find their dogs and hang out with the dogs. That was so that's how it really started. And Dad taught me how to interact with dogs. He was the one that took me for my riding lessons. He said to me, Anna, just remember, never meddle with nature.
What do you think is better for a dog? Life in the country or life in the city as a townie? You're an expert. Tell us what you think. Does it make a difference?
Yes, I think it does. And honestly, I would say the city. Okay, I'm a little bit biased because I have spent the majority of all my life, really, since I was 19, in a city environment. The problem is with the shires, you don't have as many free spaces to walk dogs because of the farmers. So a lot of all the land that's there is actually restricted to walking dogs. Then you've got to factor in all of the insecticides and pesticides that infuse all of these fields, which for dogs, as environmental stressors, can have a negative effect over time on their endocrine system. So that's not really great. The brilliant thing about Hackney and the Hackney marshes is there are no insecticides and pesticides used, so that's really good. But also it's I think the attitude to dogs, it's very different in the country. I found actually that hardly any places were dog friendly in the couple of shires I was in.
I presume that you would have said the country would have been better. But now that you mention that, that's very true. I mean, in London, of course, we do cater a lot for dogs. I mean, where we live here in sort of Hampstead Highgate, and we got the Hampstead Heath, and every pub around here, they say, please bring your dog. In fact, you're not allowed to go into a pub unless you've got a dog. We all know that you're mummy to Prudence. Why did you opt for a bull terrier as your first dog?
When I was 37, Dad had just died and I really went off the rails. We'd had a bit of a turbulent relationship, and our neighbour Toby had a bull terrier, a white one called Bill, obviously after Bill Sykes. And I loved Bill, and I used to offer, if Toby had to go somewhere and not be able to take Bill. We'd have Bill, he'd come around for Sunday lunch, I'd walk Bill on occasions, hang out with him. And I just loved his company. The time came, right, we're going to get a puppy. I forced the issues. This was brilliant. And I thought, I'm going to get a bull terrier. And of course, the history of these dogs is so kind of moving, because they were exploited by people from the moment they were born to be fighting dogs, when blood sports was legal in the Victorian era. So anyway, Molly, my first miniature bull terrier, came into my life age 37. I did a lot with Molly, a lot of radio, masses of television, and she never let me down.
Well, that's the breed, isn't it? So Molly essentially kind of changed your life in a way, didn't she?
Molly really did.
What made you study with the College of Integrated Veterinary Studies? I mean, it sounds very, very highbrow indeed.
I know, it's a very long name. It all began really when Molly was about 8.5. And she unfortunately had a raft of vaccinations all in one go, okay? And the next thing that was happening was lots of strange things down the other end, if you know what I mean. And she was diagnosed with bladder cancer, basically, which was not the plan, Phil. This couldn't happen. It wasn't going to happen. So I was referred to Richard Allport at Potter's Bar, who's really the nearest holistic vet. I must just say, holistic vets are conventional vets first, and they qualify a lot more in order to offer their services, which looked at natural therapies to cure things rather than just pharmaceuticals. And I learned a lot with Richard, and I just thought, you know what, I want to learn more. This really interests me so much. So I enrolled with the College of Integrated Veterinary Therapies, and it was a 2-year, very intense course. It was, you know, quite expensive, I must say, but I wanted to, and through that, I learned so much that helped Molly and really kept Molly going until she was 13. So in conjunction with Richard's help, obviously, as well.
What's your biggest bugbear about modern day dog ownership?
I actually think for a lot of first-time dog owners, it's, you know, you don't realize how short your time is with your dog, you know, and time flies. So that's why it upsets me a bit that so many people use doggy daycare and dog walkers on a very regular basis. I mean, you know, I've used a dog walker for Prudence, I think 3 times in 6 years, when my day has just meant that I simply haven't been able to do it, or I, you know, been to rush straight to meetings or whatever it might be. But it's this daily, that it's almost that people now are conditioned into thinking that's what you do. It's normal. You know, you get a dog, but you definitely don't walk it and you don't look after it in the day, and then you just have it in the evening, and I just feel it's a shame, and ultimately it's a shame, of course, for the dog. You know, it's not their fault that they think that this is the way you walk dogs, but you're missing out on the opportunity to train and bond and connect with your dog and share experiences every single day.
What do you actually think of these new designer crossbreed types?
I feel it's a shame again, to be honest, on the dogs on a number of levels. You see, all this began in 2007 after a program called Pedigree Dogs Exposed was aired. Now, it did bring up some right issues, I mean, correct issues, perhaps, relating to the Kennel Club and pedigree dogs. But subsequently, so much has been done by the Kennel Club. They have spent billions on health testing, which we can now have because science and medical DNA tests and so on have become so much more sophisticated. What people have to remember, the Kennel Club never bred, for example, a miniature bull terrier with an inherited blindness problem. They didn't want any puppies to go blind, but they didn't have the technology to test parents and ensure that that particularly hereditary problem could be eradicated. Pedigree dogs were sort of cursed as always being ill, dying young, costing a huge amount of money, being bred to look like freaks or whatever. However, so people thought, ka-ching, you know, why don't we, you know, create crosses, which we can sell to the public as being healthier than pedigrees, cheaper to own, longer lived, so on and so forth. Then there was a guide dog trainer in Australia that had a task, which was to find a guide dog and train a guide dog to the standards for an asthmatic, sight impaired client. So obviously a Labrador wouldn't work because they're the heaviest shedders. And he tried and tried with a pure standard poodle, which is the only breed that doesn't shed in a conventional way that we think of dog hair, right, to cause allergies. But he couldn't get the biddability from a standard poodle, which kind of makes me smile, and it proves poodles are very independent, you know, characterful dogs, to be honest. So he crossed standard poodle with a Labrador, and he named it a Labradoodle. He now regrets having done this so much. I think that really says everything. And the other thing, Phil, the problem is with these designer crossbreeds is because there's no registration, there's no regulation around them, unlike with the Kennel Club, where there is strict regulation, actually, and mandatory health testing. None of that exists for these designer crossbreeds. So the myth that these dogs are going to be healthier is just that, a myth. And unscrupulous breeders, of course, take advantage of these designer crossbreeds because they can. And we've seen this epidemic of puppies through lockdown, which, you know, I observed this. I mean, you must have been the same. I mean, that headline, you know, we went into lockdown, we've run out of loo roll, and we came out and we've run out of puppies.
I know you're a bit of a nutritional expert. I mean, good foods v bad foods. Enlighten us, Anna. Enlighten us, because I think everyone needs to know what good dog nutrition really is.
It's basically, you know, we are what we eat. That expression, you are what you eat.
Sure.
What does it mean?
I'm Maltesers.
Yeah, I know. um, light. At a human level at the minute, we're being really pressured by the NHS to think about what we eat for our health reasons so that we don't overwhelm the NHS. Now, dogs and us, we're actually pretty similar. Funnily enough, the main difference is the digestive system of a dog, okay, because it's carnivorous, because dogs are carnivores and we are omnivores. But the same principle is there, that you feed to nourish your dog. It's like putting petrol in a car. Why do you do that? You do that to make it go. The foods that are going to fuel you, like your car, will be the whole untainted, natural version of the food. So I just think feed your dog as naturally as you can. I like to feed raw, and there's so many brands now. It's a booming area of the market. I can't believe the firms that are out there. Way back in 2002, I fed Molly Raw. It was very difficult. None of these brands existed.
Do you think, Anna, that dogs can be sustainable in the future in terms, following on from nutrition?
Really, really good point. And lots of people, a couple of weeks ago, it was all on the telly. There was some environmental spokespeople speaking out about this. I mean, okay, so it's a very interesting book published in about 2004, I think, called "Is It Time to Eat the Dog" by Robert Vale. And back then, so it's out of date now, the figures of an average size Labrador and their carbon footprint, it was pretty scary, actually. I mean, it's the same as quite a big 4x4 car. That's quite a statement, and bearing in mind there's 40,000 Labradors born in this country alone every year, maybe a bit more than that. That's an awful lot of Labradors. That's a lot of 4x4s, isn't it? People challenge dog ownership in the future because they say that the meat consumption of pets globally is the same carbon footprint as the aviation industry. It's pretty heavy, it's hard to argue back at that. So what people are thinking, seriously, that dogs are going to have to get smaller. So your Labrador will be a thing of the past. I mean, I hope this isn't really going to happen, but this is what being balanced about it, because obviously the benefits of dog ownership, in a way, balance a lot of that footprint, okay? The joy they bring us exercise, they de-stress us, they make us laugh, they're a social network without being on social media. All of these things. It's tricky. I mean, there's one environmentalist on Good Morning Britain the other week was saying, once your current pets die, it's immoral to get new ones. I know.
It's a bit harsh, isn't it? I want to switch from Labradors to Greyhounds. Now, where do you stand on Greyhound racing? And I know it's not at the bookies. I know that for sure.
For a long time, I'd realised that the world of Greyhounds wasn't, as kind of rosy and as kind of like happy or welfare on the track, or thinking that the trainers and the owners of these dogs must really look after them, because they're their livelihood. So surely they feed them the best food and give them the best bedding to sleep on and all of these things. It was Dogs Today, actually, in Beverly Cuddy that revealed it, God, ages ago in Dogs Today, where I learned of mass graves in Ireland that were filled with greyhounds that hadn't actually even been killed properly because they couldn't be bothered. It was too much effort. So they just knocked them out and, buried them alive. I met up with the Alliance of Against Greyhound Racing, and my podcast, I did a roundtable podcast. The main vet, Professor Andrew Knight, involved. I say the main vet, but he's really studied the injuries that happen to greyhounds on the track and the consistency of these injuries that are dreadful, including broken legs, but it's about running in a circle that causes a lot of awful problems, coupled with, a wonderful journalist, greyhound owner, to explain the wonderful joys of owning a retired racing greyhound. And I'm proud to say, it really helped their petition get into Parliament. And it's now got a date to be debated. Debated being hashtag ban greyhound racing. I don't see that there's a place for it in today's world when we've got all the technology and we can make animated greyhounds. If people want to bet, it's up to them. If they want to gamble, it's totally up to them. But you don't need the real dogs.
What's your view on the rise in dog theft?
Well, what can I say? Speechless. It's, it's low risk, high reward crime that nasty people are taking advantage
Very.
of
Yeah.
and causing heartbreak and distress, again, not only for the humans, but for the dogs. I always look at it really for, the dogs, can you imagine? They must be in shock. They're piled into the back of a van or whatever happens to them. They're with strangers that don't really care. They're just looking to sell them on as quickly as it's just awful. I can't bear it.
What advice could you give them?
Be aware in the park, even I'm doing this at the moment. You see someone you've not seen before or don't know, kind of staring at you or something, just be suspicious. That's where these long lines, 5-meter long lines, come in handy. You are able with that over time, every day, patience and consistency, you can train a spot on recall. Never tie your dog up outside, obviously a shop, we've known that for a long time. I mean, we've known that for a long time. Don't leave your dog in the car, obviously for loads of other reasons as well.
No.
If you've got a garden that someone could access, don't leave your dog alone in the garden. I mean, I like to go out in the garden with my dogs anyway and make garden experiences, because I'm a bit mad. I believe that the only way this can be stopped is for the status of dogs to be removed from being chattel and being sentient being in court of law. That little bit of the chain hasn't been addressed yet. Now, it's something I asked Sir Ian Duncan Smith recently on my dog theft podcast.
Ooh. Yeah.
Because he's now championing the cause, which is great.
Yes, he is. He's a good guy.
It is. He so does genuinely love dogs.
I know he does. I know. Thank you, Ian, if you're watching.
Yeah, Ian, thank you.
He won't be. He won't be.
No, never mind. You never know. Tag him. But I postulated this question to him, actually, and he didn't disagree. So I think that's got to happen. And at that point, I think the new animal welfare sentencing bill will have a lot more weight as well.
I'm really quite excited to hear about this. It's this new wellness centre for dogs you're involved with called Love My Human Townhouse, and it's on the King's Road. Is that right?
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
Well, blimey, the last time I was on the King's Road, it was E-Type Jaguars and girls in miniskirts, and the Beatles were going along.
It's been launched by Jenny Matthews, who owns the retail outlet of the same name, Love My Human. That's a boutique and groomers. And next door but one, a property came up and they are gutting and renovating the whole thing and making it a dog-friendly cafe, a limited number of dog creche. And a wellness centre where a vet called Marvin Firth is the vet there, and he is going to be offering acupuncture, and I'll be offering nutrition, behaviour, and some therapy advice as well. And it's the whole house, so it's 4 stories.
Wow! When will it be open?
Hopefully June. So it's still
as we have lockdown lifted June 21, if that still goes ahead.
Aimed hopefully to time with that. So it's all it's all being repainted and everything. And I've devised the doggy dishes of the day. So it's a human and dog cafe, obviously.
Brilliant.
Yeah, we're going to have
fantastic idea.
That just shows how the world of dogs has changed, and it shows how dogs are now considered, I think, part of the family. To offer, I mean, this has come through demand, so which I think is wonderful.
What's the most impressive skill that you've ever taught a dog?
Impressive skill. Well, Molly was quite famous. Lots. I mean, I love training. I also do love trick training. So in terms of tricks, I guess Prudence knows everything Molly knew. Jumping through your arms. I have created. Okay, here we go. Yeah, now you're going to go, oh my God. So, doggy dancing is a sport.
I think that was a sport.
So I got totally loving canine freestyle in about 2006. So I like dancing and I thought, how perfect. Well, it was one night I had the Bee Gees on and I was just dancing around with that. And I got Molly involved, you see. And I just thought, gosh, this is it. So then I watched...
Excuse me laughing. So I'm just visualising you sitting at home on your own in the flat, getting the Bee Gees on, sitting there thinking, do you know what? I fancy a bit of a dance at the moment. Who could I dance with?
I got totally hooked. So, and the next thing was I'm entering competitions. So basically,
Why not?
Anna is the only person ever to have entered a canine freestyle event with a bull terrier. Because needless to say, all of the dogs are collies. We did all right. We came 8th out of 35.
Not bad, not
Good,
bad.
pretty good.
Yeah.
So the routine was to the locomotion. And I also did one to razzle dazzle them, you know, the Chicago musical. I even got a sequined waistcoat made.
Who would be your favourite human doggy person?
Gosh.
Somebody you admire who does a lot for dogs.
Yeah,
Brilliant,
well, obviously, Phil, yourself with this podcast, but I think, you know, there are so many people doing such amazing. Ira, you know, your wife, amazing. You know, there's too many really to mention, and I think Mark Abraham would have to
Oh,
go in
Mark,
there.
yeah.
You know, I also think Dave Wardell for really, you know, building the campaign for the animal welfare sentencing bill, and through his terrible experience with his own dog Finn, he has helped me train Prudence to become the first ever bull terrier to be able to find a British truffle. And he'd never trained a dog to sniff out a truffle before, so it's been a fun experience. And he's, you know, he's become a friend, and I've really enjoyed doing all of this through lockdown. Now Prue's just got to find one on our own reel. How's that? I'll save you a bit of the truffle and we can maybe have it on Tagliatelle.
What would you say has been your biggest achievement?
Probably the radio show.
The radio show, yeah.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I mean, it's built a whole new range of skill sets for me. You know, it's been brilliant fun working with Joe and just, you know, working at the BBC. It's a great privilege. You know, I've so missed not going into a studio now for whatever, but well over a year. And yeah, so I'd say that really.
If you woke up tomorrow morning as a puppy with a human brain,
yes,
what would be the first 2 things you did?
What would I do? I would probably, easily be, you know, able to understand that the fridge door opened. So depending on how big a puppy I was, I'd have to work out using my nose how to open that fridge door and access the cheese. That would be the first thing. And the other thing would be learning with a human brain, going out there and helping people who might appear scared of me to love me.
Anna, we are coming to that time. I don't know if you've seen this show.
I've seen it.
Where
I run to
I
time.
move up here. Look, I've got my All Dogs Matter Choose Dogs t-shirt on. I've got my humongously large, heavy, very noisy bell. Anna, you've got 30 seconds. Your hair and makeup's done. You look gorgeous, stunning. Look into camera. Make your appeal. Away you go.
Well, particularly in the light of the last 18 months in lockdown, I would say, please, if you have any extra money, do spend it on a rescue charity to help the abandoned dogs that are going to be coming in. They may be delayed because people are selling their puppies that they bought for ridiculous amounts of money online to recoup their costs. They're going to go to homes that have got a difficult teenager to deal with now. And I see that the floodgates will be happening. And all the rescues are great. There's so many independent charities out there. For me, as an ambassador for All Dogs Matter, I would say, please do spare a thought, spare a couple of quid for All Dogs Matter.
Oh, Anna, that's really nice of you. Thank you for that, for All Dogs Matter. I wasn't expecting that, but that's
but I am
very, very kind of you. They do need it. They do need it. All we're asking for is a small donation, or a big one, or a little monthly direct debit towards helping some of these. Anna, thank you for being my very special guest this week on Doggy People. And I just want to say, you know, a personal thanks for everything that you've been doing for dogs. I mean, you are, I know it's going to sound a bit schmaltzy, but you're an outstanding person for dogs. And I think if I was a dog, I'd be woofing, I'd be well, I was going to say be licking you all over, but I mean, I can't really say that on air, can you? But I would. I mean, I'd be pouring you all over. You can't say that either. No. Anna Webb, ladies and gentlemen, a massive round of applause. Anna, God bless you. Thank you. And I hope that you and me will be clinking glasses in the not too distant future.
Oh, let's hope so. But thank you.
Thank you. So that's the end of our show. And I thought it went well. Massive thanks to my friend Anna Webb. And now you know what I'm going to say, don't you? Email me, tweet me, do whatever you want. but please just get involved. And if you can, make a small or a large donation to All Dogs Matter, or in fact, any of the dog charities featured on this series of hashtag Doggy People. So thanks for joining me today, and join me next week when we'll have some more hashtag Doggy Heroes. Stay safe, love your dog, and cheerio.